All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. And today's video is going to be for you guys that are either looking to get a laser or looking to upgrade your laser. And it's a surefire way of getting your wife to agree to let you get a laser. And that's make things for her, guys. If your wife's like mine, and there's a backstory, and I'm going to show it to you, and she has these in the kitchen, this project is going to be a project that you can do with your laser. It doesn't matter the thickness of material you use, as long as you do a little math and come up with the right thickness for the layers. And I'm going to show you the video first of how this project came to be. So we'll be right back. All right, so explain to me what you got going on.
Okay, this is a mess. It is embarrassing, so it's got to be fixed. So I need a spice rack. And I have all these different sizes. So I'm gonna need you to kind of figure out how to make it more organized. Because cookie tins, no, can't be using cookie tins.
Okay. So we're thinking laser project, CNC project, 3D printed project?
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, whatever you can do to make it better. But anyway, I need all the spices. Those have to stay. The lunch boxes can actually go because they're not using lunch boxes anymore. And so mainly this bottom shelf. So if you'll just take my spices, figure out what size, and then let's put them back in there a little better so I can see them, because that's a lot of space.
So that it'll kind of look like what we did with the medicine cabinet over here.
And you can stack it.
Do you want those standing up or laying down? Does the labels have to be visible?
I mean, that would be nice. Yeah, that'd be cool. And I was thinking like kind of a staircase little thing, but you do what you do. Whatever you want to do. So
that's what we need to come up with.
Yeah.
All right, so after receiving the request, of course, guys, I came out here and got right on the project and was trying to figure out a way of maximizing the space and keep it from having to move things around. And this is what I come up with. So this is made from 4.5 millimeter Luan, and you can use thinner material, you could use thicker material, or whatever you have available to you. The one thing that I do like the way that I designed this file is whether your material is 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, it doesn't matter. 3 millimeter, it doesn't matter. You're just going to need to do a little bit of math on your spacers to figure out how many to use. And I'll show you how to do that in the video of the file design here in just a second. But basically what this turns this into is a bit of a lazy Susan of sorts to go into your wife's cabinet or yours if you're into cooking. Not that guys can't cook, I just don't. And it allows you to set these little guys on this pedestal, and you can rotate it to select which one you want. Now, down here on the bottom, I did try to maximize use of the space and put a row on the inside. And my thoughts there were you could put the ones that you don't use that often back here. You would know where they were. And you could even go as far, guys, if you wanted to, as label these. If you know what spices you have and where you want to put them, you could actually engrave in the file, add some text to it, and you could engrave locations for them. I chose not to because I'm not that well versed in the spices, but that's a little project that I think anybody that has a laser, it's be a fun little project, easy, simple to do. And I'm going to also include the file after we go through the video, just to kind of show you how it's laid out and how to put this thing together. So let's get over to the computer and we'll go over it. All right, guys, so basically the object here is to figure out what kind of work area you have and build the design accordingly. I built this one for our cabinets, and I'm using up every inch of counter space that's inside that cabinet, but I did allow a little bit just to make sure it doesn't hit the edges, and created this circle because it is going to rotate, so it needs to be a circle. And using the circular array tool, I just try to figure out how many of them I can get in there without, overlapping. And the circular array tool can be a little testy, so you got to play with the settings a little bit and get the spacing just right. But once you do that, once you figure out exactly how many you want to put on there, how many will fit, it's pretty simple. And so that's what I'm trying to just make sure I got all my spacing right, because where it starts and ends, it can be, like I said, a little trying to get that last gap just right. But once I get it set up, I'm going to hit OK with that. And what I'm going to wind up doing now is I want a second row, but I want them inside of that row. And that's just to maximize use of this space. These are going to be some of the less accessed spices, but just to make use of the entire space, I figured what the heck. So I'm going to add that second row inside there and get all the spacings correct so that they fit the way that I want them to. And basically you're done with that. One of the tricks to this is this piece right here is going to be the piece that rotates. So the hole in the middle, you need to leave a little slack for the dowel. You want it close, but you want to leave that center hole. You want to leave a little excess room, a little wiggle room for that to be able to rotate without gripping the dowel that holds everything together. That's the secret on these two layers here. So that's basically what I've done there, and now I'm getting ready to go ahead and burn those because those two pieces have to be glued up. There's going to be a little wait time, so I'm going to go ahead and get them sent to the machine while I'm building the rest of the file. The measurements of the circles for the little spice jars, those are standard, I think, for the most part, but if you have a different size and you're building your own file, be sure to measure the part that touches the table. Not necessarily, you know, where it's above the table. Make sure it's where it touches the table because some of these things have a little taper to them and that could mess you up. So I'm going to go ahead and send that part to the machine, and while it's burning those two pieces, I'm going to be prepping everything else. And you see I'm making some adjustments to the center diameters of the circle. This is going to be for the spacers, and what I did is I just duplicated that center circle and made a spacer that could come out enough to not interfere with the placement of the other little jars. And I'm just going to zero those together, and I'm using on this one I'm using that same loose fitting center circle. You don't want these very tight because you're going to be stacking these on there basically just to act as spacers. This just enables you to be able to use the pedestal dowel as a point of rotation without having to worry about inducing a whole bunch of friction. So you want those just snug enough to where they're not wobbly, but loose enough to where it can rotate. And I'm doing the math there, and I figured out the total height that I need by measuring the little container, added a little bit of extra to it just to give me a little room, and divided that by the thickness of my material. And that tells me how many I'm going to need. And in this case, it was around 16 to get me to where I needed to be. And I'm just going to burn a set of 16 real quick so that we can go ahead and start stacking this, because I'm literally designing this thing as we go, guys. This is just, I had an idea, it was in my head, and I'm trying to put it on paper. So those pieces are burning, getting those ready to get out and start gluing them up. And we're just going to go back and work on the rest of the file in the meantime. So you can see here, I've went ahead and started working on some more pieces. These pieces are going to be the base. You're going to have 3 of those guys. And what I've did is the base, the circle in the center is a little smaller because that allows it to basically be almost a friction fit, but I do glue it just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. So you can see that one's 19.2 is the center circle. And I'm go ahead and laying this out as a file so that you know which pieces are what. And these 2 pieces right here, this is the first tier for the little carousel, lazy Susan, whatever you want to call it. But the center hole on these is like 19.5, and that little bit of room allows it to rotate freely without gripping that wood dowel. Like I said, if your dowel size different, you may need to adjust those measurements. So if you're designing this file yourself, feel free to take your own measurements just to be sure. You don't want to waste any material. But I'm grouping all this stuff up with a tool line label and a tool line around it just so that it makes it easier to keep up with what's what. And this is going to be my, for the containers that I'm using, this is going to be my little set of spacers that I'm going to come up with. I went ahead and got this laid out to where I have a lot more of them because I had almost forgot that this is going to be a 2-tier. So I'm going to need a whole bunch of spacers. Basically, I'm going to need a spacer the entire way up this wood dowel except for those layers, which are going to be 4 layers where there's going to be a tray. You got the bottom one and then the top one. So if you're doing a 2-layer like that, you can go ahead, depending on your material, and subtract 4 from the overall height of the dowel, and that would tell you exactly how many you had or needed. So I'm just doing a little housekeeping here, fixing this file up. But those are the things to remember, is the ones that rotate, the trays that rotate, those need to have a little more gap in that center hole from the dowel. You don't want it gripping the dowel. The ones that hold it in place, the base plates, the 3 that I put on the base, those need to be almost a rubber hammer fit. That way you don't have to worry about using glue, but I would still put a little glue on there just to be sure it doesn't hurt. And basically you're building a piece of 3/4 inch plywood for the base by the time you measure all that. And now what I'm doing is trying to come up with the size for the next tier. Just kind of looking, I want to pay attention to, you know, how in the way it's going to be. I want to make it as small as I can, even if it requires having a little bit of thin material near the edges, because it's going to be 2 layers. So I'm just going to bring that in, and my thoughts here was, if I did put larger containers in the bottom, this would actually allow them to stick up past this tier. But afterwards, I've realized that the larger containers were bigger on the base. And so I wound up just making a whole nother set for the larger ones with larger holes. Same basic design. It's just the holes for the containers to sit in are a different size. So going ahead and labeling the files. And guys, you get the point here to this file. It's nothing too complicated. A bunch of circles. That's really all you got to do. And here I am fixing to crank out a bunch more spacers to go ahead and get all these pieces together. So we'll just kind of skip through some of this. All right, so this piece is kind of critical. This is going to be my cap for the top. Now you can do this with 1, 2, 3 pieces, however many pieces you want to use. What I'm doing for the cap is I'm taking one of my spacers, downsizing that hole to the 19.2. This is going to make it a real tight fit. And then I'm going to glue those 2 pieces together. And once I glue them together, that's going to make like a cap that once it dries, you put a little glue in that pocket, you've got everything set up the way you want it, and you just glue that to the top of the dowel, and it holds everything together. Now, if you're an overachiever and you feel the need, you could also pre-drill it and put a little screw in there and make it to where you could take it apart and adjust it if needed, because really the base is the only permanent point of attachment if you put a screw there instead of gluing it. And that would enable you, if you wanted to change the spacing, make it for taller or shorter jars, you could literally just rearrange the layers and adapt it for different heights. So I'm going to cut those pieces, guys, and just throw this thing together. So I'm going to speed through the assembly and just share it with you a little bit there. All right, so we got the project done last night. I'll let you talk about it. I'll be your camera person.
Okay. So he did get the project done, and it's perfect. So a lot better. And now I can find things, and it even spins. So that's real cool. Unfortunately for him, and he doesn't know it, but I'm not cooking tonight. But if I were, it would be a lot more organized.
Not cooking.
So,
not
well, cooking. I mean, it's hot, so I don't want to, turn the stove on. So we'll make some sandwiches or something. But I don't need spices for that. But when I do, I'll have them ready. So
cool. So
sometime this week you'll get something.
So do I get approval? Is that Brandy approved?
Yes, much better.
All right, guys. I hope that was a cool little idea for you for a project for your laser. It's simple, easy. The only things that you will be needing, and you can watch in the video, you're going to need some way of putting your glue on. Some glue, of course. This is a 3/4 inch wooden dowel. Now, I measured this dowel and I set the tension on the spacers and whatnot based on this dowel. This claims to be a 3/4 inch dowel. As long as your 3/4 inch dowel is the same size, you shouldn't have to change any measurements, but that is a possibility depending on where you get your materials. And of course, you're probably going to want to have some Clack Shack wood clamps, but you can use others. These are just the best thing going. So, but other than that, guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate you watching the video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll have more great projects later. And until the next time, be safe and have a good day.